now tuned in to the cold, hard truth. Cayman's #1 hard-hitting live podcast show, where we feature some straightforward conversations on political, social, and celebrity news and all things happening in the Cayman Islands and around the world. This show was created to give the people a voice and a means of being involved and informed without any filters. Sometimes it gets crazy, but we always keep it real. We bring you the tea, piping hot, so grab your favorite beverage and join the conversation via WhatsApp at 324-1612. Email tips@caymanmarlroad.com. Now, here's your host, Sandy Hill, broadcasting live from the beautiful Cayman Islands.
There's three major things that has to be addressed in the Cayman Islands: cost of living, diversifying the economy, and self-sufficiency. And when I talk about self-sufficiency, I'm talking about our ability, our capacity to be able to take care of ourselves. Let's focus on agriculture, where all of us want to make sure that we're hoping for the best. We always have to be prepared for the worst case scenario. Just imagine for a second if a hurricane was to come and sit between here and Florida, just like Hurricane Mitch did in 1998 in Honduras. What would happen? I would bet you the shelves would be empty, or at the minimum, very much depleted. That in itself should be able to identify to us that there is a major problem in terms of our capacity to feed ourselves here in the Cayman Islands. We have to solve that problem. And that's why if and when elected, I'm going to head out east and see if we can free up a lot of this locked land, open it up for opportunities for agriculture as well as other types of development. And when it comes to farming, whether it be livestock or plant life, I believe we can look beyond the borders of the Cayman Islands. What's preventing us from going to countries like Jamaica or to Honduras and actually owning or buying farms that are already functioning and operating and even exporting to other countries, making it Cayman Islands property? I believe that that's absolutely possible. In addition to that, creating opportunities for our local investors to be able to invest into those companies and other persons through their pension accounts as well. To me, the opportunities are tremendous, and that's my vision.
Good morning, Cayman. Good morning. Happy Easter Monday. Thank you guys so much for tuning in today. Let me just make sure we've got everything queued up here. Lots of information to discuss. Just give me a few minutes. We've got some breaking news. And as you guys know, we bring it to you as it's happening. So give me one quick second. And I'm actually going to tell you guys precisely what is going on. It looks like somebody's missing. Not just somebody, but 10 people. Hey, hold on one second. Morning. Hey, child, news just never stops. Okay. All right, so it looks like we may have 10 Cuban nationals that have gone missing. You know, they are fitted with ankle bracelets, folks. And around 1 o'clock, about 1:40 this morning, the police received notification from the monitoring center that they have 10 devices that are not in communication with the headquarters. So, you know what that means. They've gone missing. So, I'm just putting this up on the website. And not only have they gone missing, but it appears that their monitors are showing that they're actually out to sea. What a hot mess. Yes, my good folks. Don't know what to say about that, except if they can go missing, well, pretty much anybody can go missing. You know what I'm saying? Yes. Okay. Doesn't give me much confidence in their monitoring system. But anyway, it looks like in this particular case, the missing don't really want to stay here if they're out to sea. So we will bring you more details on that if we are able to throughout the morning program. We've got a lot of information lined up here for you guys this morning. So let me just get everything queued up. I was up extra early. First of all, happy Easter Monday. I know a lot of you are still out camping and enjoying the activities with friends and family. However, I did want to have the show this morning because, first of all, we have so much to discuss. I mean, literally, the news just doesn't end. And in addition to that, where's my phone, by the way? I might have to grab my phone. So we do have a lot to discuss this morning, and I wanted to ensure that you guys are just kept abreast of everything that is happening. So, you know, because news doesn't end, in some sense, we have to be turned on 24/7. Post-election, we might take a little bit of a half a day vacation. Maybe we'll go to the BRAC again, because the BRAC is always a very different, enjoyable vibe. All right, so give me 1 second. I just need to sort out a few things here in studio, and then we are going to be crack-a-lacking in terms of the show. Content up for today, we're going to talk about a viral story of abuse that was featured over the weekend, and you'd be surprised how many other women have reached out to me. So we're going to talk about shining the light on those dark corners of the Cayman Islands. And we're also going to be talking about solar today and what's happening in terms of solar power and why some people say the government is hell-bent on trying to stop solar. I mean, it sounds crazy, but let's get the nitty-gritty of all of the details.
Miracle Brokers International is Cayman's premier source for all your packing, moving, and logistics needs. Whether it's moving a baby grand piano for a concert or moving halfway around the world, we have you covered with our team of local and international experts. MBI has over 30 years of industry experience and are able to get the job done for you right the first time. Contact us today for all your packing, moving, shipping, and logistics needs at 949-5989 or email info@miraclebrokers.com.
All right, folks. So good morning. Good morning. Let me just see who is here with us today. Good morning to Anthony. Anthony's the first one out of the barn today. Anthony, how are you? Good morning. So good to see you. Atlas, thank you for tuning in. Atlas, of course, is back in the UK. Barbara's here. Good morning, Miss Keisha. How are you, darling? Kay is here for it. Siobhan is locked in. The nice and lovely Miss Linda is here. Everyone always has up their best profile picture. Charlene has got some roses for hers. Good morning, Charlene. Atlas wants to know about the Easter eggs. I've been hiding all weekend while I'm actually taking my daughter for a little bit of an Easter egg hunt today. She's had some chocolate and marshmallow Easter eggs over the weekend because, you know, kids, they really love their chocolate, I tell you. Good morning, Chrissy. Good morning to Kay. Yes, we're going to be talking about this very serious topic this morning of domestic abuse and just abuse generally in our community, because I'm always so shocked at how widespread it is. Unbelievable. Good morning, Keisha. Holy Easter, everyone. Absolutely. Good morning to Genevieve. Curlew is joining us as well this morning. Thank you so much. Good morning, Louie, all the way from Detroit. Says good morning to our at-home and international crew. So I want to talk about Leroy's birthday is today. Happy birthday, Leroy. Yes, Leroy. It's Leroy's birthday. So guess what? Somebody blessed Leroy with an actual holiday on his birthday this year. So Leroy, hopefully you're not working and hopefully you get to enjoy your awesome day. Miss Allison is here. Ellie is here. Olivia, thank you guys so much. Miss Karen, Miss Beulah, Miss Bonnie, of course. I've got some peppermint tea because my tummy has been upset the last couple of days, since Saturday, actually. So yesterday just wasn't easing up on me. So, I had to get my little Pepto-Bismol bottle out. And since then, it's been trying to settle down a little bit. But I'm going to be very, very careful with my diet today, which means I'm going to have some peppermint tea this morning because, peppermint does help the tummy. So yes, good morning to Irvelyn, Corrine from West Bay, Gina, Jillian. Roderick is here for the tea. He says, good morning to everybody. All right, so let's get it. So yes, we've got what we believe are 10 missing Cuban nationals gone out and about. It looks like they're trying to leave the island based on the fact that, they are, my apologies. Somebody just highlighted a little typo in the story. It looks like they are out and about because they've made a break for it. So they are out to sea, and I put the wrong sea. So let me just fix this in the story, child. Because I know you guys be like, can Sandy type? Yes, I know how to type, and I actually know how to spell. But when I am moving super fast, sometimes the two just don't line up with each other, to be quite honest. So it's the wrong C. It's so funny how the brain wants to resort to certain words, but it's S-E-A, not S-E-E. Thank you so much for pointing that out to my good friend there. So I'm just going to fix that quickly. So yes, they have gone missing. We'll keep you guys updated. For right now, that's all that we know, right? We know that they're missing. And unfortunately, we do not have any more details than that. They're missing. I guess the authorities will advise us once we have more information, or once they have more information, I should say. Apparently, they became aware of the situation after 1 o'clock in the morning. So they made an early morning break. I'm kind of surprised that they did it right now, to be honest, because the seas are a little bit rough at the moment, like literally very, very rough. So they are most certainly taking a chance. We've had rough seas warnings all weekend long. I would be I would be very cautious if I were them about leaving at this particular junction, especially in the dead of the night. And so I wish them good luck with their journey, I guess. I mean, I guess if the police can retrieve them, they will do so. Ay, ay, ay. 10 of them have gone missing. And of course, if they don't return, like the other batch that ended up in Mexico, remember they left and the Mexican authorities were able to find them. So there's always a danger that they're not found. Good morning, Felix and Anne Marie. And if they're not found out to sea, then that means that, they may perish. So there's always that real danger. I don't know what kind of vessel they went on. Normally they steal a vessel, which I must say is probably a little bit more is a little bit safer than the makeshift ones that they normally get. Now, I'm not using my CMR mug this morning because I had some tea last night as well, and I just put it in the sink and haven't even had a chance to wash it properly. So I'm just using my standard little brown ceramic mugs that I have around the place. But that's not stopping Richie from having his CMR mugs ready with all of his Italian treats. Wow, that's a beautiful picture that he has just sent me. I got to share this with you guys, and then let's get into the discussion this morning. Ooh, the Tuscany looks good. Amaretti, coffee, turtle. Oh, those look. He's got some seahorse lemon zest. His wife makes all of these homemade Italian baked goods, and they are delicious. She has shared some with me, and I gotta tell you, they are super, super scrumptious. So over the weekend, let me just share this with you guys. We had a bit of a situation that was really disappointing that I even had to report on. Look at that. Isn't that delicious? Yummy. And they got their coffee, tea in the CMR mugs and ready to go. Absolutely love it. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. So over the weekend, actually before the weekend, to be quite frank, I was receiving notification of an incident that was happening with a young lady and a man, and it was apparently popping off on social media. So I noticed that some people had tagged us in some of the comments and the posts and stuff like that. And obviously, when you tag CMR, you have an expectation that it's going to go viral, right? And you only tag us if you want it to go viral. I mean, honestly, you don't tag us if you're trying to hide anything. And so, what appears to have happened is that last weekend, there was a young lady who was assaulted by a man, viciously assaulted, I should say, by a man who she says was her ex-boyfriend. Now, the ex-boyfriend in his head, as is often the case, seems to have a very different idea of what was going on. So he has all sorts of, that same day I bought you lunch and I bought you flowers. So he thinks that that's what makes it a relationship, because this girl that he's been with, I guess off and on for quite some time, that he bought her lunch and flowers. If that's all it took, or if that's all it's taken, girls, we need to raise our standards quite a bit. Her version of the story is, and she's posted this on social media, that they were no longer in a relationship. They had broken up some weeks before, allegedly because he had been cheating. So there's a lot of allegations about cheating on both sides and a lot of back and forth. And I'm going to tell you guys something here this morning. Situations like this, you guys remember the young lady Olga Smith, who who's now facing murder charges because she stabbed her boyfriend at the time in East End. And what I want to say is, I'm going to talk about how these situations are interconnected here in a second. But what is really, really critical, I think, for people to walk away from in terms of this is that at the end of the day, these situations always escalate. They will never, you know, de-escalate on their own. Okay. So if you are in an abusive relationship, you need to get out. Okay. I don't care if you're a man, if you're a woman, what your status is, you need to get out as quickly as you possibly can. The longer you stay and the longer you remain as someone's punching bag, and I do not for 1 minute blame victims for staying, because I think that those of us who've never been in a domestically abusive relationship are unaware of what victims go through, how they're very what's it called? How their very self-esteem is impacted by these types of situations. I often do believe that a lot of victims have already been victimized before, so they become easy prey for predators. And I guess these guys know who to engage with and who to abuse, essentially. I think that there are some people and their personalities who are a little bit easier to be abused than others. But the faces of domestic violence survivors are all of our faces. Like, you can't look at someone and say, well, that person is more likely or not to be abused. I think that ultimately there are some people, like I said, who have maybe grown up in an environment, and I keep saying this, and I know a lot of you are not understanding what I say and why I say the things that I say, but I keep saying that it's really unfortunate that we're raised in a Caribbean culture that believes that the only way that we can control our children is by beating them, because we send a message to our children at a very early age that I can put my hands on you and I can still love you. And children get that message, right? Because we say it to them. We say things like, I brought you into this world, so I'll take you out. And putting all jokes aside, I think it's important for us to understand the impact of those types of statements on the psyche of our children. So we tell them, I am doing this to you. I'm physically chastising you because I love you. So how much of a stretch is it for that same young person at the age of 16, 17, or even 30 and 35 years old, or even older, to get in a relationship with someone and be used as their punching bag and then be told, well, I'm going to hit you today, and then tomorrow I'm going to bring you flowers and take you out to lunch and express how much I care about you. Now, as is normally the case, Marcia, thank you so much for sharing your personal story here on the show this morning. We really appreciate that, because I think it's important for victims to speak out. People who've been through it and who are now on the other side of it, they've got to speak out, number one, to let someone know who's in it that there is hope for you, right? This is not a hopeless situation, but you have got to find a way out of the situation. So let's look at what transpired last weekend. Apparently, the young lady had gone to some event. It's an annual event called Fog. It's like I think it's a powder fete or something. And for whatever reason, she was out that night and she didn't get in until after 8 o'clock. After 6 o'clock in the morning. And she says that the ex-boyfriend was there waiting her. And you will see for your own eyes precisely what happens next. So this young lady says that they broke up 3 weeks before this happened. And basically, she was, attacked shortly after she got home. Now, he has made a lot of comments. And if I were him, I would have just kept my mouth shut, especially after the article came out late on Saturday, because he felt the need to make all sorts of comments and to get on the post. I found out later on that we had, for some reason, I don't really know why, he's one of those Instagram users that we had previously blocked, which means that he would have been acting the fool with us at some point and was blocked. But he has more than one Instagram and more than one Facebook account. So he then started making a bunch of comments. And apparently, as of last night, he's now posting, he's changed his Instagram status to say he's sorry. And I want to talk about that here in a second because abusers have a history of claiming that they're sorry. But here is what he initially posted on his social media. And then we're going to talk about that. And then a perfect example of why we now know that this is not a one-off incident with this young man. So let's talk about a few things here in his comments, right? So, first of all, he was the one who apparently started the whole pop off on social media. And he says a couple things that I think are very interesting and demonstrates the mentality of a typical abuser. So, of course, he doesn't want to take any accountability for his actions. And he talks about, for example, how everybody else is at fault for this, but him. So, at one point, he says, how she cried when I gave you flowers and then comes home with the next man. You disappoint me. You F a man that has his woman pregnant. You had to know, you probably didn't know. He seems confused, but anyway, you gets loose on a few drinks, so that was easy. So not only does he insult this woman with his words, but he also is basically calling her a slut and a whore. Let's just be very honest here with what he's trying to say. And then he turns around and he says, I'm not happy with what I did. I honestly don't like that I'm honest. What is it? I honestly don't like that. I am so wrong for that. Hope y'all can forgive me. Now, why he's asking for y'all, which isn't the victim, to forgive him is only because at some point he started taking a little bit of heat on social media. Now, no one needs to forgive you but the victim, to be quite honest. As a community, we're not in the business of forgiving you. You need to get some help, and you also need to be held accountable for your actions. But then he goes on, and this is when you know that someone is truly not remorseful, because he goes on to blame the alcohol. And I wonder how many of you are sitting here listening to this and seeing how incredibly familiar this story sounds. So he goes on and says, alcohol got the best of me, but I didn't punch her. I only grabbed her head because I was so effing mad and was tired of being lied to. Okay, Makiva Bush, alcohol. What's that song? The alcohol made me do it. So always blaming third parties, whether it's the liquor or somebody else. Then he goes on to say, well, I didn't punch her. You guys saw the video, right? He body slammed into her. Just in case you missed it, let's just repeat it one more time. Just for clarity. There she is trying to get inside of her house. And here he comes, grabs her by the neck, throws her down on the ground. And we can only see him moving at this point. And it sure looks to me like he's throwing some licks into her. Then his friend rushes in and his friend has to literally pull him off of her. Look at that. And you can see at that point where, she's trying to just get up, basically. He doesn't call that a punch. Dude, what universe are you living in? But it's semantics. It doesn't matter if you body slammed her, if you're defining it as a punch, if you're defining it as a hair grab or whatever. You assaulted this woman. And we're going to talk about some other assaults that have occurred as well. So he goes on then to make other comments such as, let me just see here. At one point, he blames her friend named Kira. Somehow Kira is to blame for it. So it's the alcohol, it's Kira, it's the fact that she's lied to you. And then he says, especially when you buy her flowers and had lunch on the same effing day. Because again, somehow as a man that gives you rights to her because she's your property, right? Then he goes on, but says, so sorry for what I did. But right after that, I accepted right away that I need to leave her alone. So she's the problem. You need to leave her alone because she's why you're violent, right? Because she had me so confused, he says. So again, victim blaming here. It's the only way I acted up like that, but all because of Kira. Because when Brittany wasn't there, Kira brought up a girl's name, and I have nothing with, like, I don't even know how this part is confusing, but if it was me and her dating, I don't even know what he's talking about, but he goes off on a tangent there. And then, I think once she started responding, then he was saying on his social media that, oh, well, tell them why I felt that way. Show them, again, as though she is somehow to blame. He says, I bought you flowers. We sat down, had lunch almost every day. How is that stalking? Okay. She claims that he's been stalking her. He's talking about how she disappoints him. Now she responds, and then again, he says in one of these posts that I never boxed you though. And then he laughs about it. So he put some little laughing emojis that he didn't box her, as though somehow any of this is funny. And then he says to her, show them why I got mad at you. So it's always other people. It's the victim's fault. It's the alcohol. It's her friend. It's everybody else but him. So when he says that he is half sorry, we cannot genuinely believe that. And this is the young man. So what we know about him is that he's a Honduran Caymanian. And he seems to enjoy being a thug and a gangster wannabe. There are a lot of allegations surrounding him and swirling around him about drugs. And I cannot believe that the police have not yet arrested him. They're investigating, and you know how long that will take. But at the end of the day, as they carry out their investigation, he's out there doing the most. So she then decides to respond to some of his allegations. And she says that after 5 years, she says, there's no excuse for domestic violence. After 5 years, it is time that I break my silence. Now, a lot of people are sitting back going, why would she sit in a relationship for 5 years? I cannot answer that question. What I can tell you is every victim will react differently to situations, and we shouldn't be in the business of judging victims. We should make sure that they have a safe way to leave. The most dangerous time for a woman or anyone who's the victim of domestic abuse in particular is when they are trying to leave a relationship. they're more likely to be assaulted and killed at that time more than any other time, because their abusers realize that they are losing control. So here's another post that she put up. She says, "I'm upset to hear about the post that my ex is making on social media. He cheated, he lied, he put me in the hospital, and now he's trying to act like none of that happened. Watch this video. This is just a little piece of what happened last Saturday." So shocking, right? And again, he wants us to believe that this is just a one-off incident. Well, here's what we know. We know for a fact it isn't one-off. Here's some other pictures, not related to last weekend, where this young lady was dragged on the street. Everybody's like, why do those look like street burns or whatever? They are, because he literally dragged her on the street. So she's got bruised and bloodied legs and knees all scraped up, right? So this is the man who now wants you to believe that he didn't punch her. This was October of last year. And I don't know how many other instances there would have been, but I want you to listen to a series of voice notes. And all we did was put them together so that you can hear the details of, essentially, he was in the middle of beating her and she had the foresight to start recording the audio of that.
I can't even swallow. What am I talking, right?
Ow! Jason, I'm driving!
Yo, I am so vexed with you right now. I'm not vexing nobody. Because you caused this.
Drive.
Yo, you deserve fucking
My head is bleeding because you're ripping my hair out.
Because of that fucking shit. I don't give a fuck if you're a woman or a man. You're fucking fucked up. You make me look like a fucking victim. You make yourself look like a victim. Like that. You think? You
Jason,
fucking think?
You punched me in my head
Yo,
20 times.
Fucking... Bro,
Tonight, no, you have punched me in my head 20 times on this drive home. 20 times, Jason.
I don't give a fuck. I don't feel sorry.
You don't think that's enough?
You make them on the fucking big size. You know they got big size.
Jason, I'm not arguing
You
with
put
you
them
now.
against me.
Can you calm down now?
Yeah, you stupid little bitch trying to drop me home.
Can you calm down
Fuck.
now?
Yeah, almost nowhere near you. You is a setup. You need me fucking out here and bruise on your bumble clock, eh? To make you see how fucking serious it is. What you gonna do to a person's life? Where you going like that? You made me look like an Eli for the green fucking Chevrolet.
So you don't think you're going on
You
now?
dummy, yeah, I go on. No, I deserve to fucking fuck up, you dumb bitch. Because of you. Yo, I won't grab you so fucking boring.
You already did. Please
I'm
stop.
gonna tear your face up. Yo, you fuck me up. Every time you come with this kind of shit, you fuck me up.
Please stop.
I ain't gonna get you fucking, you dumb bitch. If you had just sent me your drink, I would've get a long time. Oh, this on me. I am so fucking chill. It's on nice getting your bumble clock, man. Girlfriend drinks, and you come cuss me up.
Jason, stop!
Me up. You gonna stand me up, huh? Everybody look at me. Look at me, Dusty. This is stupid fucking ass. Start step, yo. You can't drive. You came to the bar, you saw me, you went out, don't dump me. So
I
guess
did.
what? Yo,
I did,
yo,
and I'm sorry.
yo.
But you didn't need to beat me up.
Ah!
I went on dumb, and I'm sorry. But you did not need to fuck me
No,
up.
you need that. You fucking need more.
All right, folks. So if you're not super disturbed by those series of voice notes, you know, something is wrong. I can tell you that much. It is very, very unfortunate and very sad. But what is more telling is that you hear her saying at certain times that somehow she is to blame. She's like, oh, I know I effed up, stop hitting me 20 times in the head. It's really unfortunate that women continue to believe that they are the ones who are to blame for when people are abusing them. Now, there's a lot of things that are very unfortunate about this specific situation. And I really hope that the police are taking this seriously. I do know for a fact that one of the ongoing concerns from victims, because I hear it all the time, is that they are not receiving the police assistance in a manner that gives them any confidence, number one, that it will be dealt with. So a lot of times victims go to the police and they're getting police officers who themselves really don't care. And I have to tell you that the fact that we recruit so heavily from Jamaica, um, which is probably 75% of our police force, brings in a lot of cultural things that isn't always beneficial to us. So we have a lot of officers on the force who don't see anything wrong. They're like, oh, well, this is just a little tat. And they will tell victims, and I have heard this over and over again, they will tell victims that you need to fix it. You need to go cook for your husband. You need to do this. You need to do that, whoever it is that's abusing you. And it's really, really unfortunate that that mentality is pervasive. We have a Caribbean mentality that it is okay to beat people into submission. And even some of our own police officers share that mentality. And when they're in on duty and they're wearing that police uniform, you think that they would know better. But unfortunately, it still rears its ugly head, and they give people bad advice. And sometimes they themselves are not motivated to investigate an incident. Now, this is where legislation, folks, becomes very important. This is why we need to have zero tolerance for any sort of abuse, but in particular, domestic abuse. You know, the state of Florida has some of the strictest abuse laws in the entire United States of America. So I know that I've gone over this with you guys before, because I think it was last year, year before, there was an attorney who was a partner at Maples who was alleged to have beaten his wife severely while they were in Miami Beach celebrating his birthday, to the point where she was found passed out in the hall of their hotel and had to be taken to the hospital. And of course, they started colluding with each other, as normally the case, immediately. And she did not then want to press charges, and her story started to change in terms of what had happened that night. But all of the evidence pointed to the fact that he had done that to her, that he had, I think, at some point broken her cheekbone. I mean, it was just ridiculous what the police report said. Now, as a matter of interest, he has somehow managed to make this incident go away. And the records have been sealed so that we cannot get any meaningful update. And he wants to tell people that, well, it's been sealed, it's like it never happened, sort of thing. But in the state of Florida, even if the record has been sealed, if he ever goes back to Florida and he's, heaven forbid, arrested for another domestic offense again, they will take into consideration that he was arrested. Even if he pled not guilty, even if he was not found guilty, they will still take into account that he was arrested for a previous and similar incident. So Florida has very, very strict laws. And in Florida, when the police show up to your door over a domestic situation, somebody's going to jail. Somebody's going to be removed from the situation. As we can see here in the Cayman Islands, we don't have such stringent legislation. Nobody has gone to jail yet. The police, I suppose, will take their time investigating this, and God knows how many months that will take to see if anything will even come of it. In this jurisdiction, oddly enough, we still allow victims of domestic abuse to be the drivers of the incident report. In a lot of jurisdictions around the world, it does not matter if the victim decides to cooperate or not. If there's sufficient independent evidence. So say, for example, in this case, there is the video. There are the photos that she has posted of an incident in October as well, and God knows how many other. There's voice notes now that are in public domain. That would be enough in other jurisdictions, such as Florida, for the police to build a sufficient case against him. In Cayman, however, and again, this is a legislative matter, we continue to allow victims who are traumatized, who have been psychologically scarred and damaged, to be the driving forces of the police report and the outcome of that. And that's unfortunate, because we know that victims are often in the moment not in the best position to really make the best decisions. And oftentimes they are trying to protect the perpetrator. The perpetrator might be a father of their children. He might be threatening them otherwise. And so they do feel a sense that They want to protect these individuals, despite the fact that they have bruised and battered them, oftentimes for many, many years. So, legislatively, we need to change that where the victim can become non cooperative. And that does not mean that the prosecution cannot move forward if they have sufficient independent evidence to do so. Remember some years ago, there was another case with a Cayman Bracker who heads up, I want to say, the Maritime Institute or whatever here in the Cayman Islands, the Maritime, some government department. And his matter, again, was allowed to disappear because the victim decided to drop charges. We know of members, MPs, sitting MPs who have a history, a long and extensive history of abusing their wives. We've all heard the stories of broken collarbones, broken arms, where they're flown outside of the jurisdiction to get treatment so that no one will ask questions. And yet Cayman is so incredibly small that people whisper and people talk. We also know that some of these men are child predators and child abusers, and we elect them as MPs. So this is where, unfortunately, the Caymanian population is not prepared to discuss these issues, but it starts at the very top and goes all the way down. Anyone can be a victim. And I would dare say that anyone, in fact, can also be an abuser. Evidently, it doesn't matter your financial status, your position in life, it just doesn't matter. And so if we're giving our MPs a pass, which apparently the premier has just decided as it relates to Mr. McKeever Bush, that we're more than willing to give him a pass and not hold him accountable, what do you think is going to happen when it comes to the police department? Are we not sending, the wrong message to those persons as well? So someone shared yesterday a series of messages with McKeever Bush. Apparently he was on a tirade as usual on social media. And people were saying, well, Mr. Bush, you've beat a woman. And in his typical response, what does he do? He tells them, I hit no woman. Really? And again, this is just so incredibly typical of what these men do. Telling people that they don't know what they're talking about. Well, allow me to refresh your memories that I know what I'm talking about, because again, I'm one of the few people here in the Cayman Islands who can actually say, without fear of contradiction, that they have seen the video. So Mr. Bush did hit a woman. Now, I don't know if he's not wanting to categorize the victim as a woman. And again, I believe that that video should be in the public domain. Trust me, if I ever get my hands on it, it will be. So here he is fighting someone over the weekend on social media, and he says, I hit no woman. Okay, Mr. Bush. Then what is she? If she's not a woman, wasn't your worker at your restaurant, by extension through your son being a part owner, what do you think she is? I hit no woman. And if that's what you're judging me as against him, then go check the woman who he beat. So once again, never taking accountability, always throwing shade at somebody else. It's always somebody else's fault. Does this not sound familiar? Oh, I didn't hit her. Okay, let me understand what you did. You pulled her hair, you punched her, right? You threw her to the ground, you threw her phone up against the wall. In the kitchen scene, which is still seared into my brain, you threw her around the kitchen and was choking her out like a rag doll. But yet you didn't hit her? What am I missing here? Right? In your head, you say that these things didn't happen. And obviously they did happen. And so I am perplexed and I am confused by how you come to be able to now say on social media that you didn't hit a woman. You did hit a woman, Mr. Bush. Let us not lie about these things. How can you ever claim that you are truly remorseful for what has happened when you yourself refuse to admit the facts. I'm trying to just find if I can put my hands on his sentencing notes, right? And this is why, I know the prosecution probably isn't often in the business of doing this, but this is my opinion as to why these types of things should be released to the public. The judge described it as a serious, unprovoked attack. So help it make sense, because it doesn't make any sense to me. You pled guilty to multiple counts of common assault. And even on the one count that you did not plead guilty to, because he was of the opinion that somehow not pleading guilty to it because they didn't have the video footage was going to somehow save him in the end. But he had to end up admitting that the prosecution's case, which is that this woman was attacked not once, not twice, but 3 times in the space of 20 minutes, actually did happen. So he pled not guilty to one common assault and then ended up admitting and agreeing with the prosecution that, yeah, okay, the 3 incidents did happen. You see, the perpetrators don't get to rewrite the history, folks. They don't get to tell this victim that, oh, I didn't actually hit you. Somehow you're imagining things, right? So she says, if you didn't box me, then how did I get this bruise? There's a bruise under one eye, and then on the other side, there was another bruise as well. This was during the attack last weekend. So the question is, her eye is all banged up. How did this happen? If you didn't hit her, who are you trying to kid here? But it's always the same excuses, right? Now, here's the most interesting thing. This young man and this young man, I'm going to show you the similarities. I don't know if this is some kind of gang symbol here, because you'll notice that they both do the exact same thing. So again, maybe we need to be very, very cognizant of who we are allowing into this country and who we're importing in, because we have a lot of our own badasses and troublemakers here to concern ourselves with. But we seem to be really happy importing the worst of the worst and then integrating them into our families quite easily. So this young man is no longer alive. He's dead. Do you guys remember? He was killed by a young lady by the name of Olga Smith. Now, here she is. When we first heard about this incident of her stabbing him to death, one of the very first things that I heard is this was another situation of a back and forth in terms of domestic violence, always fighting and carrying on. This young man might still be alive today had someone, aka the authorities, taken a more stringent approach like what they do in Florida. And the first time you get a report of a domestic incident, you arrest somebody and somebody's removed out of the situation. So this young man, he's going to go around continually abusing women. He's not going to stop, because that's not what they do. And one of these days, he's going to buck up on an Olga Smith who's going to have enough of him, and she's going to stab him too. Or somebody's going to stab him. Now, I didn't know that him and this young man were actually BFFs. So these two, the one who's alleged to have beaten up this girl this weekend, and we see it on the video and the previous voice notes and previous incidents, was best friend with Mervyn Connolly. Now, the irony of it is her sister, Olga's sister, took to social media and said, isn't this the same man who said he was going to kill my sister for what they say he did to his best friend? Now, it seems that what he has done to this girl is what my sister has been going through for many years. But since this girl is a white girl, there's a lot of sympathy towards her. But since my sister is Spanish and her name has been immensely scandalized, she does not care what they say about her, but God does not like the ugly. Besides that, she's more Caymanian than the person they said she killed. Not that any of that should matter. The abuser who beat her while she was pregnant with his own child. So it's very, very interesting. Birds of a feather tend to flock together. Olga had initially pleaded guilty to, I think it was manslaughter. And then at the very last minute, we reported this last month, I believe it was, she changed her guilty plea to not guilty. And so now she's going to go to trial for murder. And, if they have evidence of abuse, folks, both her and her family and whoever else need to bring that out. Now, I draw no conclusions about that case. That case will be litigated in a court of law, and we will certainly bring you all of the details. But am I surprised to hear that this young man is abusive and does this to women? Right? And then his best friend is also being alleged to be of a similar character. That doesn't surprise me one bit. Not in the least. So then he started getting on social media. He tries to attack CMR. Good luck with that, son. Because I can tell you one thing. This is one woman you would not be beating without consequences. And after, people started calling him out, even some of his friends, he started to back off a little bit. Oh, well, he's sorry and this and that. Listen, son, we get the sense that you're not sorry about a damn thing. You're sorry that it's gone viral. You're sorry that you have been caught. Now, the irony of all of this is that, funny enough, now that it's out in the public domain, I'm getting all sorts of messages from other victims. Because I'm of the opinion that these types of assaults don't expire. So I have another victim who has shared her story and shared her photos, which she has given us permission to do a write-up on, because they want people to know what type of abusers these individuals are, so that maybe another woman can be saved the shame and the physical and emotional trauma that they had to go through. In addition to that, I have parents contacting me about how other young men related to the situation were messaging their 13-year-old daughters, knowing full well that they were underage, trying to entice them into sexual situations, offering girls alcohol so that they can take advantage of them. So as is normally the case, we're shining the spotlight on Jason Brown, but by extension, there are other people who are now being highlighted as a result of this. Cayman Mall Road has a remit to shine the light on every dark corner of our community. And whether that dark corner is the fact that government doesn't have a real commitment to solar and just pays it lip service, which we're going to start that conversation here in a minute, or whether that dark corner is people trying to sexually abuse our children or doing so, or they're beating women, children, men, whatever, we will shine the light on those situations. So I say that to say that if you're an abuser in this community, you should proceed with caution, because it's only a matter of time before your story is going to reach us. And I received a number of phone calls yesterday with some people saying, oh, well, I want to tell you my story, but I know that you're related to this person. And I want to make this extremely clear. I don't care who the person is. They could be mother, father. I don't have any sons, or even my own daughter. It wouldn't really matter to me who the individual is. The principle is the same. If you are engaging in this type of behavior, you will be exposed. Here's somebody else weighing in on this issue with the young man who was killed, saying Marvin was also an abuser. Now, if Brittany killed Jason, it would have been the exact same scenario. Everyone would jump to say how great of a person he was. In reality, they really don't know him. If I killed my abuser in 2017, I would have been called the same. I would have been put to shame. My life would have been torn apart for another man's actions. A lot of women would be blasted as killers when all they were really doing was defending themselves. I said what I said. It's time we stop defending these abusers, dead or alive. Now, I know a lot of us don't want to speak ill of the dead, but facts are facts. And if this can be proven, then that's a sort of information that needs to be in the public domain. And I agree with that sentiment 100%. Chuck said on Facebook, is it any surprise this happens when Cayman allows their elected officials and leaders to beat women without punishment? Cayman's official government policy is allowing men to abuse women, from what I can tell. Bobby says, sadly, those who are supposed to help either help abusers cover it up or look the other way rather than actually do anything about it. Wouldn't put it past the officials here to believe the victim just perceived abuse, irrespective of the evidence put before them and put into the system, so those positions to help aren't further victimizing those who are trying to speak out. So again, the system is part of the problem. And those of you who are family members who are condoning this behavior, and when I say condoning it, you're condoning it with your actions. You're refusing to hold these young men accountable. You cloak them up. You talk to these young girls about not pressing charges. I've heard of some of you as parents stalking these young girls and putting them to shame as well. And you need to get it together, because I'm hearing the stories and I got to tell you, they're very, very disturbing. And all of you will be exposed on CMR. All of your disgusting behavior. And if you think for 1 minute, because you're a cousin, you're a friend or whatever of myself personally, that has no stake in this game whatsoever, I can assure you of that. You will be exposed. I don't care who you are. I don't care what kind of persona you have built on social media. Because, that's what they do in this day and age. Oh, they're fun-loving people. They're so much fun. I'm always doing funny memes and funny videos, and this is who I am. That's not who you are. You're a predator. And you're preying on young girls. You're beating the children of the mother of your children. And I'm very much aware of the allegations. So I would warn all of you. And then you have your mothers being part of the shenanigans as well. Mothers, can you believe it? Not just fathers, mothers are actually co-conspirators. They're enablers. They are stalking the parents of their own grandchildren, right? I'm hearing young mothers saying that their children have witnessed the abuse, 3, 4, 5-year-old, and they are being traumatized by what they see. There are people in this community who've gotten upset with me and don't like me because I've exposed their family members for preying on children. When I tell you that I really don't give a damn, trust me, you can take that to the bank. You can take my word to the bank. I don't give a damn. Oh, I blocked her on Facebook because I exposed that your sister was dating a child predator who raped and molested somebody else's child. And you think I'm going to care? I'll never forget, a deceased family member got upset with me one time because I called in on the radio and was talking about his son, who happens to be family, and saying that this person should be locked up forever because they are a repeat offender and there is no real hope for this individual. Every time they get out, they will offend. And now I think they have a life sentence because the courts have finally realized how incredibly dangerous they are in this community. And so, as I recall, I got a phone call from this particular family member all upset with me. And like I told him, I'm going to tell all of you right now, with all due respect, you might be my elder, but what you're saying to me is pure nonsense. And I will speak up against all abuse, family, not family, I care not. And you could have saved your 50 cents instead of calling me. And maybe had you done your job right by your own son, he wouldn't be the type of person that he is today. Maybe if you hadn't sent him off in other people's care who were sexually abusing him, he would not be prone to abusing other people today. I'm just saying. Parents don't want to take accountability for how they have played a part in the situation, but yet think that they can be making phone calls to me about putting their children on blast for that type of behavior. Adult children who have many victims. And it just goes from one generation to the next. You can't raise a son. I think Ms. Darlene mentioned this earlier, right? We have to teach our young boys not to assault women. Yes. Everybody's always concerned with, oh, well, what's the victim doing? What about your children? What about the guys who are abusing these girls, who are raping girls? Oh, well, why does she dress this way? Why is she going out drinking? Okay. None of that matters. Even if she is 50 sheets to the wind's drunk, why is your son thinking that he can take advantage of her? Why are we raising abusers, stalkers, perpetrators? That needs to be the real questions. Because clearly we have some dysfunctionality in our community that needs to be addressed. Now, I see some of your comments about Spanish blood. Everybody thinks that Spanish people have a temper, and I'm not going to, I don't know that Spanish people, I think a lot of it is just a matter of what you grew up with and what you were exposed to. I got to give you a joke. I briefly, ever so briefly, dated a guy from Colombia, and his sister said to me one day, well, you know, in our culture, the parts where they're from, I guess, they believe that if you're not fussing and fighting, that you don't love each other. And I'm looking at her like, are you kidding me? Yes, you know, my husband fights and fuss, but that means that he loves me. I'm like, Lord Jesus. Dumb and Dumber. It's that type of mentality, unfortunately, that we have it here. We have people here who have felt that way for many, many years. It doesn't make it good when we import even more of the ignorance. But yes, there are people who believe that. And like I said, let's check ourselves. You beat your children, tell them, well, I love you. Okay, well, mommy beats me, daddy beats me, and they still love me. So then this somehow makes a lot of sense. It doesn't make any sense. Sarah, I agree that this isn't about Hispanics. Obviously, these two young men are of Hispanic origin, from Honduras, but it's more about what they were exposed to, I'm sure, as children and the norms that they grew up with. Miss Aldine says he was obviously dating the wrong person because had it been her daughter. And you know what? We all say that. Trust me, we all say that. And yet I know of incredibly sensible people, mothers, who will find themselves in this very same situation, Aldine, and they do their best with their daughters. You need to get out. And they cannot force their daughters to leave these abusive men. I've had mothers call me crying on the brink of a nervous breakdown because their adult children are deciding to stay with a known abuser. And there is little that they can do except to offer them a place of comfort when the shit hits the fan again. And then, you know, gone back into the relationship. I was speaking to a young lady recently about a young man from West Bay connected to the likes of Captain Eugene, who was very, very abusive. Talking about Caymanians doing it. Very abusive. Beats the shit out of all of his baby mamas and girlfriends and everything. And, you know, she had gone to court the last time and pleaded with the court. Oh, yes, he's a changed man now. He claims that he has changed. And for the sake of her child, who she wants to have a relationship with him, she's begging the court for mercy. And I saw her recently and she's like, I don't know what I did that for, because he's right back. As a matter of fact, it's now worse. They're not in a relationship, but he's out there binging on drugs, the whole 9 yards. And I said, wow. I'm not saying that you can't reform an abuser, but boy, I tell you, be very, very careful how you plead for mercy on their behalf. Miss Darlene says that she was a victim for more than 15 years. I stayed because I thought my children would lose their father. Stop. You'll make it, and without an abusing relationship. It made me so angry to watch this. Lock his ass up for life. Thank you so much, Clinton. Clinton says, for every one of these situations that gets social media coverage, there's another 2 or more that goes unreported. Not 2 or more, Clinton, probably another 10 that go unreported. And I've got people contacting me who want me to know about their stories, but then don't want to share it. And that's a whole other, number there as well. But yeah, you hear him in those voice notes blaming her, and she's also accepting some blame for what has happened. It needs to stop. And I believe it begins with stronger legislation in place that binds the hands of the police. You have to arrest someone. Now, let me just say this. On the political front, we have an individual who's running against Chris Saunders, who's going around telling people, oh, don't vote for Chris Saunders because his wife is a Jamaican. And don't vote for Chris Saunders because his wife is a stay-at-home mother. Oh, okay, Mr. Frederick. Then can you please tell us why is it that the police was called to your house, still living at home with mama, was called to your house recently regarding an alleged domestic situation with your sister and niece? Vincent Frederick, I'm talking to you. Jackass of the day. Care to explain that one? While you're worried about who Chris Saunders has been married to for over 20 years and who he's been with for near 30 years, maybe you need to explain to the people of Bodden Town why the police still showing up at your door over an alleged domestic situation. Isn't that ironic? I'm just saying. We need to be very, very careful what we are doing and who we're putting into the assembly. Now, the other thing that is ironic is a lot of the young men who were there commenting about, oh, this dude's an abuser and this and that. Yeah, you shouldn't do that, bro. Some of you are abusers yourself. So don't think that I don't know what's going on with you. Seriously. Don't think I don't know. And your turn could be next. So I'm going to suggest to you, and some of you have ongoing court matters that we are keeping an eye on. I would suggest to you that you probably keep your mouth shut, because the more you are protesting against what other people are doing, the more others are looking at you going, but you're an abuser too. Are you for real right now? So don't throw rocks when you live in a glass house. Don't throw rocks when you are guilty of the same thing. Don't pretend to be a social media hero when in real life you're a loser, abuser, just like him. I gotta tell you the truth, right? I'm always surprised at the little guys, these little skinny guys that want to abuse women. I'm like, boy, they can find some strength to be pounding these girls up. Again, size doesn't matter, but it seems to me like they must have small man syndrome going on, no confidence, and that's how they express themselves. It needs to stop. And we will have no mercy as a community, and we should have none for people who engage in this sort of behavior. He not locked up, Marshall. He's still roaming free. So Gary points out that violence is not the cultural norm for all Jamaicans. Well, we can't make those types of, it's not the cultural norm for all Caymanians either, but there are certain sectors of all communities that this is what they engage in. Whether they're from Honduras, Colombia, Cayman Brac, West Bay, it doesn't matter. Right? So there was a voice note. You guys probably saw that story on your website a couple of days ago of a Jamaican man, very lengthy voice note, threatening to kill his woman. And the police have arrested him for that. Thank God. Because the amount of murders and violence against women all over the world really needs to stop. But we're going to focus on our 4 little corners right here in the Cayman Islands. So Sarah says, report that he had some spliff on him and 50 cops would have arrested him, but not for this. Lenny, absolutely. Florida don't play around, and we need to adopt some of those things. All right, folks, we're going to switch gears a little bit here. Thank you, Aliano. Stephanie says only when the victim kills the abuser, action will be taken. And yeah, by then it's too late. I mean, I am sure that Olga Smith is going to live a horrible reality, having to tell her child, who's now been born, that your father and I were in a dysfunctional relationship and I had to end up stabbing him to death while I was pregnant with you. And even if she does not tell that child that, trust me when I tell you, the child will hear the story, because that's how Cayman is. Lorna says, been in an abusive affair when I was living in Cayman, and the guy wanted to have an affair with someone else while I lived with him. Moved out and lived on my own. Had a customer come to see me to pick up a pair of shoes, and sat to try on the shoes. Saw the guy and hit me straight in the left eye, which was damaged, and his ring wounded my eyebrow and bloodshot all over too. I have blurred vision up to this very day. Wow. Joseph says now the topic is all about Mrs. Bush. It's not Mrs. Bush, it's Mr. Bush. But he attacked a woman violently. And so why wouldn't he be included in the discussion? I'm just saying. Why would he be excluded? And it hasn't all been about him. We mentioned him all but a few minutes. But the point is, if our top leaders in the community are engaging in this kind of behavior, do you not understand that young people are sitting back thinking, well, if McKeever can do it and get away with it, you know? Good morning, Orville. Thank you so much for tuning in. Bruce says, is it not illegal to make contact with a minor looking for sexual favors? Only recently has that become an offense of grooming. And still, most parents are not reporting it. I have parents yesterday tell me, oh, this person's like this and that. And I said, was it reported to the police? Yeah, people are saying that they're reporting it. They're not reporting it. And that's part of the problem. And I've said this numerous times before. If you are not reporting these situations, you can't even hope that anything will be done about it. So it starts with reporting the matter to the appropriate authorities. That's where it has to begin. Lorna has given you some good advice. Don't be embarrassed. Don't cover it up because of family members or coworkers about what they say or what they think. Because the day that you're killed because of a domestic situation, none of those people are going to be able to help you with their words. Flashpoint, thank you so much. He says it starts in the home. I agree that we're raising a lot of dysfunctional children. Linda says, it's a shame. One thing I will not stand for is no man to beat me. My father didn't beat my mother, and I will not allow for no man to beat me. That's why I don't live under no man's roof, thank God. Thank you so much, Liliana. She says, thanks for shedding light on these criminals. I can't even imagine a man putting hands on me or my girls. Exactly, that's my cousin who said that. Don't know why she would even express such foolish things because her husband is as tame as a cat. I'm not sure which comment, Liliana, you're referring to. Lucia, thank you. Yeah, to me, this isn't about Honduras, Jamaica, or Cayman. Like I said, all cultures have this issue. This is pervasive in a lot of communities. What you find is some have more of a no tolerance for it. So someone posted something I thought was very interesting about their friend who used to live with his father, and the father used to beat him horribly. And then at some point they moved to the US and the father never touched him ever again. And he said, it's because in the US, if he beats him or touches him, he knew that he would get arrested. So I thought, isn't that interesting? So legal ramifications can impact people's behavior. It can serve as a deterrence. Christine points out that Honduras has one of the highest rates, it might be the highest in the world, of femicide, which is female murders, and the same percentage as drug cartel murders. Women's lives matter. And that's a fact. So when we talk about abuse around the world, there's no doubt that in some countries, as a woman, you're more likely to be murdered than in other countries. And I got to tell you, South and Central America are at the top of the list. And so is the Caribbean. Because of, let me tell you what the rates are by country here for 2020. Because of the mentality of the people. November 2020, a global tragedy. World Vision Canada talks about femicide and the rates around the world. You guys need to read some of these articles. So the killing of women because they're women, basically. Some of the top countries in the world include areas of Africa, Asia, the Americas, Europe. It's like every single continent, but there are some that are more at risk than in other places. Statistically speaking, I do know from past reports, I don't know how Honduras fared in 2020, United Nations stats. We can probably have a look through this, but I do know that in previous years, they were at the top of the list. So, I suppose there's an article here, March 19th. Let me show you guys this so you can have no doubts that, I don't make this stuff up. We just report on it. Here we go. This is what we're looking at. Femicide rate in selected countries in Latin America in 2019. Honduras is at the top of the list. And double that, by the way. I don't know how much you can see this. Let me just increase it. They're at 6.2 per 100,000 women. Double that of El Salvador, which is at 3.3. Trinidad and Tobago is quite high in the list at 2.9. Dominican Republic, Bolivia, Brazil, Guatemala, Mexico, Uruguay, Paraguay, Argentina, Colombia, and so on. So without a doubt, Honduras clearly has a problem. Those are facts. That's not anybody just making stuff up. But again, we have to understand the implications of importation of violence, importation of certain cultural norms, and how that does compound our situation here as well. Thank you so much, Jessica. Jessica says, I don't care what people have to say about me, but I'm so happy that you're doing this, Sandra. Women and men that are doing these things need to be known to the public. Being in an abusive relationship is not easy, and it's definitely not easy to come out of it. You always feel that you're doing something wrong, even though you're not. These people, even though they go to jail and spend their time, I don't want the public to feel that they spent their time and that they have changed. And it's amazing when they come out, how they can so easily find new victims. I don't know if women just don't know about their reputation by the time they find out it's too late. All right, folks, so we have an important guest who's going to be joining us this morning because we want to talk about solar. And it's very, very important for us to have this informed discussion. We did invite some people from OfReg. So James Whitaker is going to give us the backdrop against what's actually happening with the solar industry. Now, I've known James for a number of years. He has set himself up as one of the experts in the solar field here in the Cayman Islands. He owns a solar company, and I'm actually one of his clients. So I purchased my solar system from James and his company, Green Tech. And my last bill, folks, I tell you not a word of lie. Let me just look it up because I want to give you the exact amount. My last CUC bill, as a result of investing in solar, was, hold on. And it's an investment, you know, solar is not cheap, that's for sure. But let me see here now. Caribbean utilities. My last bill, why am I not finding it? Hold on. Was basically, oh, I'm in the wrong email. Hold on. Was I think it was $48 and change. Hold on. Here we go. March the 4th. My last bill was $48.52. So, isn't that amazing? $48.52. And that's because we bit the bullet and we invested in solar. How much was your last bill without solar installation, Stephen? I cannot even remember, because when we moved into our home very early on, we made the decision that we needed to invest in solar as quickly as possible, basically. And so we didn't have, we had a few bills. Listen, we live in a 2-adult household, 1 child. At the time, she was a baby, so she probably used less electricity. Now she's, wanting to watch TV and do other stuff. But we really try to cut everything out. So all LED lights, all the lights were replaced before we moved in. We went tankless on the gas, tankless gas heater, dryer that's on the gas as well. So no electric dryer. We have the the gas stove. So we've double insulated our windows with tint, like literally security tint has been placed in the vast majority of the windows to keep the heat out. Proper insulation in the ceiling. So there's a lot of things that you do outside of solar, but I would say their bill is probably at least $400 and change. And there were some months after we got solar that we were in the credit. We didn't pay a single dime. We were running a credit against CUC. Now it seems like OfReg, as they appear to often do, are kind of messing up the situation. James, good morning.
Hey, morning, Sandy. How you doing?
I'm good. Sorry for having you wait for so long.
No apologies needed. I found your show quite interesting and a bit infuriating. As a father of 2 girls, I was a little bit disturbed, obviously, by the video that you showed. And my thought was, where the hell are the men? Where's the father? Where's the uncle? Where's the cousins? Where's the friends?
Exactly.
I have 2 daughters. If one of their boyfriends ran up on the porch and attacked them like that, anyways, let me not go there.
Yeah, it is infuriating, but you're here to talk about but another infuriating situation. Thank you so much, Miss Lorna. As it relates to solar, so we're gonna go back a little bit historically, right? So for the record, we did invite OfReg to come on the program, and they responded with the following response. They said, good day, and thank you for inviting OfReg to attend your program tomorrow morning. As you're aware, OfReg engaged media in the blah, blah, blah. I should probably remove that. But anyway, so basically they said because they were already on media, they think that they're done with the discussion and they don't see why engaging in this any further is going to be beneficial. It's unfortunate that they feel that way, because at the end of the day, you engage in the public. That's your job, OfReg is there as supposedly a regulatory agency. They set policy and they make decisions that impact all of our lives. And we have seen them come under a great deal of scrutiny in relation to how they've been handling their affairs, not just as it relates to solar, which is now being highlighted, but beyond that, other areas as well. Let us not forget that the Public Accounts Committee, which, by the way, hats off to Ezra Miller, who everybody says is one of the best, if not the best chairperson of the Public Accounts Committee that they've ever had. And he brought them in last year, as you guys remember, during COVID, and he made certain recommendations, including the fact that Mr. Linford Pearson, who's one of the directors of OfReg, should be removed from that post. There's a lot of failures administratively and operationally that are occurring at OfReg. And if you all, the general public, do not understand how these failures are impacting your lives, this is going to be but one example here today. So, James, break it down for us, please, in terms of historically how we are even having this discussion and what has OfReg been doing that is placing the entire solar industry in jeopardy.
Yeah, so let me paint the background for you. 12 years ago, Cayman embarked on this renewable energy journey by launching the pilot program of the CORE program. And just so everybody knows, the CORE program is what we call a feed-in tariff. It means that you can put solar panels on your roof, and that solar energy is sold to CUC, and you get a credit on your bill. So Sandy, at your house, your solar is producing energy. That energy is being paid for. CUC is giving you a credit for that, and then you're getting that on your account. And so that program now is 12 years old. From its original pilot inception. In that 12 years, we also embarked on building a solar farm, a commercial solar. And that was started, it was commissioned about 2 years ago. So in Cayman now, we have almost a balanced mix, a little bit more distributed generation, i.e. rooftop solar, a little bit more than utility scale solar, but we basically have somewhere around 17 megawatts in total, split between the two. In 2020, OfReg has taken a complete philosophical turn in that they are no longer supporting rooftop solar. And it's very strange. I mean, the reasons that they're giving for not doing so effectively makes them hypocrites for 10 years of their own justification. You read every OfReg press release for the last 10 years. It's about CORE being something that is going to help proliferate solar, providing consumers with an investable return and all of those sorts of things. Now the position from OfReg is that why would we allow people to put solar on their homes if we can just build big solar farms and have CUC provide that power? Well, the National Energy Policy and the law requires you to do it because the National Energy Policy says that we're going to do consumer renewables, utility scale solar, energy efficiency, and electric vehicles. So it's an all of the above approach. But OfReg is taking a philosophical change now, and they're basically not supporting rooftop solar. And it's actually worse than that because the frustrating part now is when we highlight this to the public, that this is actually their position, why would we support CORE when we can get utility scale solar for cheaper? Never mind that by law you have to do it. The government's wishes is that you do it. It provides jobs and economic stimulus, millions of dollars above and beyond the subsidy, all of these reasons. The reality is that you're not supporting it, but when you come out to debate this in public, you're not admitting that that's even your position. So if you saw the Cayman Crosstalk interview, that our debate that Greg and I was on the other day, Greg being the executive director of OfReg, I challenged him on whether or not he supported the CORE program, and he completely avoided the question. And he said, we support DER. I said, well, that wasn't my question. You well know, as we do, DER is a program that's catered for large commercial users. We support it, but don't lie to people. 99% of the consumer base cannot have economically viable solar on their homes under that program. So if you're killing the one and only program that they have access to, and you're not coming out in the public and admitting that that's what you're doing, how can we have a debate on it? And I think that's really the issue. And so, at this point, the truth is you have a regulator who is implementing the National Energy Policy, who philosophically don't agree with many parts of the National Energy Policy, specifically you having the right to have solar on your homes. And effectively what they're doing then is turning this into a commercial and industrial industry. And look, if that's what you want to do, then let's have the debate about it. The PPM manifesto, if you read page 10, it's pretty clear. They want
let's look at some of the Let's look at some of the documentation that we have here, James, because how do you know that this is what OfReg is actually doing? How did you come about this information, basically?
So I've been engaged with discussions with OfReg now for years. And
Mm-hmm.
so they've said this to me many times to my face, and we've had this
Mm-hmm.
debate privately. We've had email correspondence where they state their position quite clearly. Why would we support core if we can get utility scale solar for cheaper?
Mm-hmm.
And they put out a press release in February of 2019 stating in no uncertain terms that that was the final iteration of core because they had this DER program, which again, I remind you, does not allow solar to go on homes economically. So, they've got it in writing, and they've said it to me personally, and they've said it in front of various witnesses. And the reality is, this is their position, but they won't, for whatever reason, come out and have the public debate that this is truly their position. But it is their position.
So we have an email here that's dated December the 9th of 2019. It was sent to James Whitaker, Greg Anderson, CC'd Kristen Augustine from Louis Boucher. I don't know who Louis is, but he works at OfReg as the deputy executive director.
Yeah.
Energy and Utilities, Utility Regulation and Competition Office. That's OfReg. And he says, James, now, is he addressing this to you as in James Whitaker? Because we know there's more than one James Whitaker in Cayman.
He's addressing it to me.
Yes. All right. So if government wishes to set a policy which inflates the cost of electricity to keep people employed, then so be it. OfReg's mandate is to keep electricity rates as low as possible, as low as reasonably possible. If we can get wholesale solar for less than avoided costs, then why should consumers pay more for core? Now, are consumers paying more for core?
Yes. And so let me explain what he's really saying by when he's saying that. So you have this philosophical argument, right? Mm-hmm. So think about it in very simple terms, Sandy. 10 solar panels on a roof could never provide power as cheap as 10,000 solar panels in a field. Mm-hmm. It's just basic economies of scale, right. Basic economic principles. And that has been true for 10 years past. It's true today, and it would be true 10 years from now. Mm-hmm. So under that logic, why would you ever have supported core? Because core has never been cheaper than utility scale solar at any point in history. So philosophically, you have no reason to have supported core from the beginning. That's point number one. Point number two is the reason why the National Energy Policy says that we're going to do consumer renewables and we're going to do utility scale is because they provide two different types of benefits. Utility scale solar is about big aggregate, big economies of scale, low cost. Renewable energy from rooftops is also low cost, and that cost continues to fall over time. But what it really does, it also creates jobs, it creates economic stimulus, it creates resiliency and life safety. So if you have a Hurricane Ivan and your power goes out and you have battery and solar, you can actually run your home or run your business. Hospitals and those sorts of things can run and provide life safety if they can produce their own power when the grid is not there. So there's a resiliency aspect to it. And then there's also the economic aspect. The fact is they talk about the subsidies all the time, right? And one of the issues with the subsidies is they'll say, oh, well, we've subsidized this program for over the last 10 years and it cost $5 million. Well, the local solar industry alone is putting more than $5 million back into the local economy every single year, much less $5 million over 10 years. So the country is getting a fantastic return on investment, and this is nothing new. This is why every single country in the world does rooftop solar, commercial solar, and utility scale solar because they understand that each has its costs and benefits. And even if you accept, which is obviously true, that OfReg has a philosophical disagreement and just basically says, we're going to do the cheapest option. We don't care about jobs. We don't care about economic growth. We don't care that the country is getting back millions of dollars for the money that it's actually spending in terms of net return. Even if you have that philosophical disagreement, the reality is, you are not a policymaker. You don't make policy. You are a technocrat. Your job is to implement policy. I know this because I myself was a former senior regulator. I worked for SEMA. I couldn't have Parliament pass a piece of regulation or policy, and in Parliament, it lands on my desk at SEMA, and then James starts picking and choosing which pieces of it he likes and which pieces he don't like. So the truth is, OfReg doesn't get to make that choice. They are not policymakers. They're supposed to follow policy. Policy is made by elected representatives, elected by us, the people. And so that's also the fundamental issue, is that they won't even have the philosophical debate because, despite what you see there in writing, they won't come out and admit that that's their position, but they don't get that choice. They're not policymakers.
Interesting. All right, let's go through a few bits and pieces here. So there's this press release now that's dated February of 2019. So this is where basically they are saying that the core program is coming to an end. Is that what this is all about?
Yeah. So Greg Anderson, a few days ago, when I asked him if when I took the position that OfReg was killing the core program and only supporting the DER program, which again caters to commercial customers, his response was, OfReg has never made any public statement whatsoever that it is stopping the core program. And I just sat there in like amusement going, are you serious? You and I have discussed this ad nauseum. I know that that's your position. You put it in emails, you put it in writing, and you put it out in public press releases. So why are you coming out in the public and saying that you've said nothing whatsoever about stopping the core program? And that's just, demonstrably untrue. And again, it goes back to my point is, how do you have a debate if OfReg won't even admit the position that they're taking? So, you can read the press release for yourself. I mean, read the bottom line, which is the quote from Greg. I mean, that is completely unambiguous. This is the final iteration of core.
Wow. So he seems confused about what's going on, or I mean, does he just not know? Because it seems like a lot of the OfReg managers, the director level, they don't seem to know what's really going on at OfReg. So maybe.
No, I wish it was that simple. This is an intentional misleading. He knows the exact position that they take when it comes to rooftop solar and residential solar versus their view about why they should be doing utility scale solar. So there is no mistake on their part, Sandy. He knows exactly what it is that he's saying. And as I said, that is intentionally misleading. So why is that? Well, I think that they understand that coming out into the public and telling the public, we don't support you ever having solar on your roofs anymore, is going to be political suicide. And that is against the wishes of the government, and it's against the national energy policy. And so they don't want to have that debate in public. They don't want to take that position in public. They want to sit in the ivory tower of OfReg and actually take these actions that do kill rooftop solar for consumers, but they don't want to come out and have a public debate about it.
So this is part of what is contained in the Progressives' current manifesto as it relates to renewable energy, attacking the increasing cost of living. They talk here about making sure that all new NHDT homes, and those are the National Housing Trust homes, are built to accommodate solar energy to reduce electricity costs for consumers. Encourage and provide incentives for homeowners to add solar to roofs where possible. So on the one hand, you're saying that the Progressives in their own manifesto have said that this is the government's policy, but yet you have a regulator that is operating in contravention of the government's position?
100
possible.
100%. It's actually worse than that. Not only is it against the national energy policy and against the stated goals in the manifesto, but recently OfReg had an independent committee that they set up to establish rates for renewable energy. And after many hours of deliberations and multiple meetings and all sorts of data being provided, OfReg took one position, which was basically to tie the rates to effectively the avoided cost of fuel down to 13 cents. And the government, CREA, the former head of the regulator, everybody in that committee voted against OfReg's position except for OfReg and CUC, and voted to put the rate at 22 cents, as well as to bring in an independent third party to come in and analyze these consumer renewable programs so that they could basically add their expertise on how to set rates and how to create new programs. Well, the government voted against OfReg, and OfReg basically said, too bad. They went back to the board. When I say they, I'm talking about the OfReg management team. They went back to the board and they argued to the board that the majority was wrong. The government was wrong. And the position that the government voted for and that the rest of us voted for and that the majority of that independent committee set up by OfReg itself voted for was overruled. And so OfReg seems to be a power unto itself, an entity unto itself. how would the PPM, and I give them credit for voting against the OfReg position, but how is the PPM going to get solar on homes as they state in their manifesto if OfReg is basically killing core, doing so, showing you that they're doing it in press releases and in writing, and only pushing DER, which is a commercial program. So these two things cannot be squared. And so at some point, either this government or the next government is going to have to step in and say, look, you guys are not policymakers. The national energy policy, half of it is written in the context of consumer renewables. It talks about jobs. It talks about education. It talks about promoting an industry. It talks about a customer's right to have a choice in consumer renewable energy. So, Sandra, as we sit here right now, nobody in the Cayman Islands, as we sit here today, and I'm not exaggerating, nobody in the Cayman Islands can put solar on their roofs.
Wow.
On their homes. So you tell me, when section 3.4.1, I believe it is, of the National Energy Policy explicitly states that Cayman's consumers must have choice, what choice do you have if you can only buy your power from CUC? And so when I say that they're violating the National Energy Policy, this is demonstrable stuff. Like, you can demonstrate that they're doing this. And so far without repercussions.
Wow. Well, thank God I got mine when I did, because I would really be pissed off right now if I was trying to get it and come to find out that I couldn't. I mean, this is shocking.
Well, I mean, the truth is, one of the things that Greg raised is this technical limitation issue, right? And so what he said is, hey, we can't add any more solar because we've got this technical limit. There's only so much solar that can go onto the grid. Well, there's a couple of points to make on that. Number one, they've had what they call the infusion study, which tells them how much energy can go on the grid for almost 5 years now. Their failure to plan mean that they ran out of capacity. They were supposed to upgrade the grid 2 years ago. It's not happening now till 2022. So they're 2 years late on doing that. That's their own incompetence. So the capacity issue was created by OfReg, and it's their 100% responsibility. So the fact that they talk about, we don't have capacity, what they don't tell you is the capacity is our fault. Now, Korea, we have provided them with two solutions to this. One is to run the CUC diesel gen sets at less than the efficiency, which allows more solar to come on. And then when the battery comes online to upgrade the grid, then they can go back to the efficiency and have more people be able to add solar on without having a stop in consumer choice. They don't seem to want to support that. And the second one is pre-allocating it, saying, okay, we know we're going to get 12 megawatts in a few months from now. So we're going to allow consumers to go ahead and buy those systems, install those systems, and then they can't turn it on until the battery goes online. Both reasonable suggestions that would allow consumers to continue to have choice, and they're opting for neither of them. OfReg's current position is that since core ran out in December 5th, 2019, they've overseen job losses in this industry because they've taken a year to make decisions that used to take days. And their current position is basically that they're not going to do anything with regards to rooftop solar and adding capacity until 2022. So effectively, they believe that their mission, and I believe that it's even in Mr. Saku's response to you, that they have an obligation to promote the industry. They believe effectively that shutting down the solar industry for 2 years is completely reasonable based on their actions. So, this is the reality. I see what they say all the time. We have a right, we have an obligation to protect consumers, and we have to be fair and balanced. I mean, these are usually just words on paper. If you look at the actions, it tells a very, very different story.
Wow. That's so crazy. So as a consumer, if I'm sitting here listening to this program right now and I'm like, wow, I've been meaning to message you, James, about my solar installation, you're saying that there's nothing that you guys can do to get me solar?
Unless you're a big commercial entity, or unless you're going fully off grid, the answer for 99% of the consumer base is no. I mean, the best that we can do right now is put you in a queue and hope that the government acts and basically puts a stop to this and then moves forward. But as we sit here today, not just myself, nobody in the solar industry can provide you for your home with rooftop solar as we sit here today. And that is directly because OfReg prohibits it.
So what's I mean, this sounds so unbelievable. Steven says it's Cayman. Nothing is shocking here anymore. Well, this is shocking to me as someone who has benefited from the core program that they would decide to stop this. I mean, to me, it just sounds ludicrous. But what can we do about this?
You know, it's reached a point, Sandra, where there's only a political solution to this. And, you know, either, like I said, this current government or the next one, you know, whoever's the energy minister effectively has to walk down to OfReg, explain to them that these guys aren't policymakers, that there is a policy there, that they're the elected officials, they create the policy, you are supposed to follow the policy. Our manifesto says we're going to do solar for homes. We don't care what your opinion is. If you're not going to implement the national energy policy, then pack up and leave. I mean, that basically is what has to happen at this point. There's not anything more that Korea can do, which we're going to continue to do, other than highlight the issue in public. And we're going to continue to do that until change happens, because yes, the industry can respond and we can just cater to large commercial customers. And we can just cater to solar farms. But that's not what we should be doing as a country. It's not what other countries do, and they do that for very good reason. And it's not what our national energy policy requires. So the reason that they try to trick you with this stuff is they'll talk about capacity, which again is their responsibility and their fault. And they'll also try to tell you, well, we are doing consumer renewables and you are going to have a choice because we support the DER program. But they won't tell you that the DER program is a commercial program. It does not apply to residential customers. You can't add solar under DER to your house economically. You will never pay the system back. It will never be an investment worth having. And so that's what they're not explaining to you. So they're trying to play these word games, and then of course they'll throw out the usual platitudes about how they're really doing this to protect consumers. But at the end of the day, if you peel that onion back of what they're actually doing, the bottom line is they're killing rooftop solar for residential, and they want this to be a commercial only industry, and they want to execute the national energy policy by providing 100% of this energy, because right now they have no other policy, through commercial means. And that's not what the national energy policy says. If you look at his program the other day, he talked about, well, you know, we told you we're going to get 70 megawatts of distributed generation, i.e. rooftop solar. Yes, under the DER program. That's commercial. That's not residential. You're not telling the people that you're not allowing them to have any solar energy. You're only going to allow CUC and other large commercial customers to be able to have that solar energy. And so we're not against that. We are in favor of utility scale solar. We're in favor of commercial solar. But we are in favor of an all of the above approach. So Korea's position is actually to defend the national energy policy. But unfortunately, right now, we're having to defend it against the regulator itself.
Wow. So Donna says, does the energy ministry fall under Joey Hugh? And if not, is it not a conflict of interest since his brother had CUC? Well, I guess we can all speculate about that one.
I mean, look, I don't know that. I don't know that plays a role in it. What I do know is that the ministry voted against OfReg's position and was overruled. So give them credit. They didn't agree with OfReg, but at the end of the day, OfReg didn't listen to them. And now it's their turn to act. And I do know from talking to people in the ministry that they are trying to do things. But so far, we haven't seen any action. And why that is, I can't say definitively, because obviously I'm not involved in those discussions. But at the end of the day, it is Joey's responsibility. It is his ministry's responsibility, and they have to act. They have a legal obligation under the public authorities law, where public authorities are not following official government policy, that they have the legal right, they have the obligation to force them to do so.
Okay. John says CUC and government collusion, corporatism at its best. The government needs to stop blocking barriers to entry into the energy market. Rosemary says we need another Vic. Who's Vic? I'm not sure what that comment's in relation to. Curlew says the house that I did the air conditioning for, I have solar panels and battery. I work there. I do the AC behind Hurley's. Denny weighs in and says each candidate that will do, what will they do? Ask each candidate what they will do about the unlawful actions of OfReg to disallow rooftop solar while the law requires it. So, of course, this is something that we're now just really becoming fully cognizant and aware of. And we've not yet had an opportunity to ask a lot of our candidates. They may not even know about this themselves. Rosemary says we need another CUC company to compete against them. Steven says all jobs are gone. Florida is booming with jobs for solar. Now, how has this impacted your business, James? I know that you had an entire team of individuals and you also had other companies that you were working with. The one thing I must say about the solar installation process that I learned having done it with Green Tech is you guys are very, very thorough. So you have engineers and other people that work alongside you to make sure that the entire installation process is as professional and safe as possible. So one of the things that we discovered is that the roof straps, the hurricane roof straps on in our roof were not sufficient enough. Like we needed to hire someone to go in there and add additional roof straps because they were not enough to then put the load of solar panels on top of the roof and have it not blow away after the first Cat 1 or 2 storm. And that was a direct result of, I think it's a third-party company that you're working with coming in and doing an examination of a physical roof structure to see if it could even bear the physical load of having solar panels. So there's an entire process that a lot of people may not appreciate that goes into that. So how has the industry been impacted in terms of jobs as a result of this core program now disappearing?
Yeah, so the short answer to that is that there have been job losses as well as no new jobs being added. This is one of the sort of tragedies of it is we've had plenty of Caymanians that we've trained up over the years that are now unemployed in a sector that should be booming, especially with COVID. And you have the fact that renewable energy is one of those sectors that you can actually lean on to create jobs. And that's just not my opinion. I mean, the data shows this. But instead of going forward, we're actually going backwards. Companies, including ourselves, have laid people off through no fault of their own, but simply through the fact that OfReg has taken 1 year to make a decision. And of course, as a business, you have to pay salaries and pension and rent and all of these things. And so you can only sustain that for so long if you're shut down effectively for 1 year. And OfReg's taking the position that, hey, we think that it's okay to shut it down again for another year. And so you're going to have more job losses. And then you have other companies who have told the Cayman Compass and other media, look, the reason why we aren't hiring is because we don't know what OfReg's going to do. The uncertainty and the volatility that OfReg injects into the market, as a business, you just don't know what's going to happen from 1 6-month period to the next with these guys. And that's really the reality. And so as much as they like to talk about promoting the energy, the sustainable energy sector and all these things that they're legally obligated to do, if you look at their actions, they're the ones that are injecting volatility. They're the reasons why jobs aren't growing. The government itself formed, I don't know if you're aware, but they formed this Strategic Economic Advisory Council, the SEAC committee. And the SEAC committee was made up of industry leaders from all different sectors. And one of the key recommendations made by that committee was solar energy for rooftops and creating jobs in the short term as these impacts from COVID have been happening. And so unfortunately, OfReg's actions have led to job losses and a lack of hiring instead of a time where we should have been adding jobs. And so that's what's been going on in the job sector. As it relates to your house, you're right. I mean, everything that we install has to be Cat 5 designed and engineered. And so we always make sure that anything that we put on the roof is going to stand up to hurricane force winds. So that's something that we do as standard.
Wow. So Alric weighs in, and Alric says the current electricity monopoly will become the monopoly for renewable energy if the conflicts of interest are not removed. Troy, good morning. Troy says, how are OfReg members appointed? Surely OfReg's mandate is to support the smooth, effective, and fair implementation of the national energy policy. If the members are not doing the job, then changes must be made. Well, Troy, to your point, again, we have a report from the Public Accounts Committee that says that there's some management at OfReg that should be removed, appointed board members, and nothing was done by this government who wishes you to reelect them again. And in fact, the Speaker of the House just to make sure that we understand, and we wrote a number of articles about this, was actually hell bent on not tabling that report at all because he was aware of the I guess, what's the word I'm looking for? Criticisms that were being levied against the management at OfReg. And he claims that the reputational damage contained in that was something that he couldn't let get out in the public domain. So he was refusing to have it tabled in the Legislative Assembly, despite the fact that it had gone through the correct procedures to be tabled. So, when we talk about some of the issues here in the Cayman Islands, lack of enforcement, our legislators are doing some of the most when it comes to ignoring parliamentary procedure, legal procedure, and so on. So I guess the question then becomes, well, if they're doing it, why can't OfReg feel like they can do it too? Alec says that it's time to restructure the OfReg board. Well, hopefully there'll be some board changes coming in a lot of boards.
Well, Sandy, let me touch on that point for a second. OfReg's board has some good people on it.
Yes.
I can say that, and very intelligent, smart business people on it. So I do feel a bit of a mixed emotions when it comes to the OfReg board in that sense. I don't think that OfReg's board is necessarily out to do bad for the country. I think the problem is, from what I've observed, and these reports are now public, so people can comb through them for themselves. If you look at the reports that are going to the board, they're filled with misinformation. Right? They're filled with information that can be provably false. Right? And so if you're making a decision and you don't understand information from misinformation, you're going to make bad decisions, right? And this is one of the problems, is that I think, and this is a request that CREA has made directly to Mr. Hughes' ministry, that the OfReg board needs industry experts on it. Because you have to be able to pick misinformation from information. And it's not always easy. Energy can be a complex, renewable energy can be a complex subject at times. And what you'll find is I read these reports and I'm sitting there with a yellow highlighter, just marking out the things that are just simply untrue or that are misleading because they're only providing half the information, right? And so I'll give you an example. It's a publicly available. If you go on OfReg's website, you can read the final determination report. One of their justifications for setting the rate the last time that they did, and then overruling the government in Korea and everybody else on the 22 cents. They compared the 15-cent rates in Hawaii and Malta. Well, Hawaii has a 35% ITC tax credit. The U.S. government pays for 1/3 of the systems. So the costs aren't the same. In Malta, the cost of living in Malta is half the cost of living in Cayman. So the costs aren't the same. And so if you don't understand that, you don't realize that this is not an apples to apples comparison. But yet the key information was not put there. And the information that CREA provided, which the report says that CREA provided no empirical data, which is false. We provided all of the North American data from the US government themselves. We provided Caribbean data, and we provided data from Bermuda. Bermuda is a good example. Cayman and Bermuda trades first place on highest cost of living. Our cost of energy are very similar as well. And Bermuda's rates that they pay you for solar is 22.65 cents. Keep in mind what the government and CREA recommended was 22 cents. But OfReg said that was totally unreasonable. So, the problem with the board, I think, is oftentimes the board doesn't get good information, and they don't have the experience and the industry expertise to understand what is information from misinformation, and you get bad decisions being made.
Wow. So Bruce says that the policy has never favored energy independence and was only financially viable to businesses providing rooftop solar without any off-grid capacity. Peter says it's time to change the OfReg directors. It looks like more than the directors need to go. And he says, I guess if one is prepared to go completely off grid, you can do rooftop. That's a question.
So you can go completely off grid from a technical perspective. The issue is cost. So Sandy, your house, if we try to take your house off grid, we could provide you the 10 kilowatt system that you have now, and your bill would be very low or almost zero. And if we wanted to take that same house off grid, you would have to have 3 times as much solar. because for that 10% of the year where you have bad weather and you don't have sunshine, you have to have enough energy stored, and you have to have enough batteries. So you're not talking about 1 or 2 batteries to provide you backup power from CUC outages. You're talking about 5, 6, 7 batteries at more than $10,000 a piece, and you're talking about solar that's 3 or 4 times bigger. That's really what you need to be off grid, on top of adding a genset to that. So we just finished doing an off-grid house for a customer of ours in the Bahamas. And the reason that that customer is willing to spend $100,000 is because the grid there is very unstable, and they don't want their $1 million house to be without power and grow mold and all these things. So although off-grid is technically feasible from a cost perspective, it actually doesn't cost you much more on a cost per watt basis than you are to spend on your house. It's just that the system itself has to be so much bigger than what you have now. So if you are off grid, you're effectively spending 3 or 4 times what you would spend to be on grid. So it is technically feasible. Now, the caveat here is energy storage.
Right.
And the energy storage is expected to drop over the next 10 years by 90%. Well, when that happens, forget about the $100,000 that I just told you. You know, and this is part of the hypocrisy and the short-sightedness of OfReg as well. OfReg talks about least cost, right? But what is OfReg going to support when least cost is just coming off the grid? Because that's going to happen. And I can tell you from looking at commercial customers already, you can look at the levelized cost of energy, meaning how much is that energy being off grid going to cost me over time? And it's already cheaper than the utilities power at large commercial scale. So as the cost of battery storage drops, for your average customers, going off grid is going to be an absolute option. So unless OfReg and the utility provide you with incentives to remain connected to the grid, you're going to have this situation where the least cost for consumers that can afford it is going to be off grid. And that's going to open up a whole host of other problems, because the customers who can't go off grid are going to get stuck with all the CUC costs, and their bills are going to skyrocket, and you're going to have a political mess. So OfReg is then going to have to take the hypocritical position. Okay, we no longer support least cost because least cost is going off grid, and we don't support that. So they've got
to be honest, it's just cost prohibitive, because I mean, if I know what we did, and if you're saying to me that my costs have been 3 or 4 times that if I wanted to go off grid, although we ended up seeing the benefit because we were at the front end of purchasing a home, the front end of the mortgage for that home, financially it made sense to just tag that that investment in solar onto the mortgage. But you may not have, I may not have qualified if it was 3, 4 times the amount, you know, so it becomes financially prohibitive for people, the average consumer, to be able to then get solar, which to me is just ridiculous.
And access to solar, Sandy, is a real thing. You know, assuming that the regulations and the national energy policy were there, and they were competent, and they were being followed, access to renewable energy, the upfront cost, I mean, not everybody has $15,000, $20,000, $25,000 to just pull out of their pocket. It's like buying a swimming pool or buying a new car. It's a big expenditure. You're building a power plant at your house. But this is where, despite what the regulators say, this is where they also fall down and they fail. One of the things that CREA has been pushing for now for years is for the regulators to simply change the rule and allow CUC, or make CUC pay us the financing, or a bank or a third party financing, whoever's financing the system. If CUC paid them directly, Sandy, I would have offered you 2 choices. I would have offered you the cost of your solar system on one hand, and then on the other hand, I would have offered you 0 money down. If you pay for the system, 100% of the savings is yours. If I pay for the system, you and I split the savings. That opens up the renewable energy to 90% of the market, because you don't have to put any money down. As long as you have a roof that can hold it, you and I can rent your roof and I can share it. But that's actually illegal. Why? But yet they want to talk about, oh, you know, the upfront costs and the financing of solar. But yet the same people that complain about the cost are not doing anything to fix it. And they have the power to do that. So financing for solar is something that government and the regulator could quite easily facilitate. But all of these good ideas just seem to fall on deaf ears. And for years and years, we keep pushing for these. And it just simply doesn't happen. And there's no good reason for it.
Well, John wants to know at what point does government scrap OfReg, either by replacing it or ending it entirely? Bruce says if the government's objective is to reduce the cost of electricity to the public, then the regulator is going to have to take the position that the commercial option is the best way to achieve that objective. Is that not correct?
That's not correct. And the reason that it's not correct is that you have to, the reason why the national energy policy is written the way that it is because it's not written in the context of least cost. Let me give you an example. What is the least cost option for garbage? Throwing it on the ground. Mm-hmm. If you want to talk about the least cost is just continue to put the thing in the landfill. If you're not going to look at the environmental issues, if you're not going to look at the health issues, if you're not going to look at the dump fires, if you're not going to look at any of those other issues, the least cost is just keep throwing the garbage on the ground. Mm-hmm. So if you take that simplistic mindset, then yes, that sounds reasonable. But it is the value that rooftop solar adds why you want to also do that. So again, it's about the job creation. It's about the economic benefits. It's about the economic stimulus. So I'll give you an example. The 22 cents that that OfReg overruled the government and their own independent council on, the subsidy for that was $190,000 a year. Well, Sandy, for that investment of $190,000 a year as a country, you're getting back more than $5 million. Salaries, pensions, rents. So the country it's costing you $190,000, but you're getting millions of dollars in return. Mm-hmm. So the question then is that a cost benefit? What happens if you only have utility scale solar and you have a hurricane? Well, the problem is not the generation. It's not the diesel gensets or even the solar farm. The problem is the grid. And we know after Hurricane Ivan, the grid was down for months. Well, if your business or your home, or as something that I push the government, all of your critical facilities, your hospitals, your police stations, your fire stations, if all of these things have solar and have battery storage, when the grid is there, it can sell energy and move energy and consume its own energy. But when the grid is not there, it can continue to operate. This is business continuity. This is national security. This is life safety. Mm-hmm. So when you look at the resiliency and all of these benefits, it makes sense. The other problem that you have is, okay, OfReg says, well, we're going to do lots of 20 and 30 megawatt solar farms. Okay, again, we support that, but that has to be balanced. What they're not saying is, look, 20 or 30 megawatt solar farms, that's 100 to 200 acres of land, right? Mm-hmm. So you're using 200 acres of land when you had the same amount of free rooftops on buildings and warehouses and homes. There's over 150 megawatts of rooftops and parking lots available in Cayman. But for every one of these 20 or 30 megawatt solar farms, and keep in mind, you need more than 200. Each one of those is 100 to 200 acres. You need more than 200 megawatts. So you're talking about thousands of acres of natural land that's going to have to be cut down to put up a solar farm. So it's not that we're against solar farms. We're just saying that there has to be a balance. So the issue is simply more complex than price. And that's why the national energy policy, you're talking about 50 people, 4 years, tens of thousands of dollars, multiple consultants, passed in Parliament unanimously. That document was not made willy-nilly. And the reason that it says that you're going to do rooftop solar as well as utility scale solar and electric vehicles and energy efficiency is for very good reason.
Mm-hmm. Wow. All right. So Bruce, hopefully that helps. El Rey says, is there a collusion between OfReg and CUC to protect CUC revenue? Well, we can speculate about that, but as we say in this program, that would be speculation, not confirmation. So I don't think we have any confirmation of any collusion. We can only speculate about why the OfReg directors are making this decision. So Bruce says, if government policy includes a component related to the employment of Caymanians, then the costs and benefits need to be factored in to any decision related to rooftop and commercial solar. DD, thank you for joining the program. What is the connection between OfReg and CUC? Are they working hand in hand? Taking this privilege from the people of Cayman is hideous. Caymanian people are suffering at the hands of those that should be making sure the way of living is more affordable. The people of Cayman have been crying out for years about the cost of utilities. Hi, Peter says, James, how can you say that the BOD is intelligent and conscientious if they fail to consult industry experts in their decision-making?
Well, technically, I said some of them, to be fair. Majority rules in these matters, so I don't know that a majority of them would meet that description in my personal view. But as I said, I think one of the issues that they have is that they often, from the board reports that I have read, and I have them all, and I can provide them to you, there is misinformation in there. And if you have misinformation and you're not able to discern that that's misinformation, you're going to make bad decisions. And so I think that the board also needs more expertise on it. It needs industry people on it, so that misinformation doesn't get out of there. Or doesn't get there to make decisions. And I think at the management level of OfReg, my personal view is there is a competency issue there. It's one of the reasons why CREA stressed that we needed to bring in a third-party consultant to consult on these consumer renewable energy programs. I've been engaged with OfReg for 7 years, and I've been talking about these consumer renewable energy programs for 7 years, and they have failed to do it for at least 7 years. So they have a lot of soon come, we're working on it, and I've been hearing that for many years now, but you don't really hear or you don't really see anything more than soon come, and we're working on it. So we need a third-party consultant to really come in and analyze these consumer renewable programs and set up a way to create a rate methodology that makes coherent sense, because what OfReg does now just doesn't make any coherent sense, and they constantly just sort of jump between different justifications.
What a hot mess, as we say here in this program. Flashpoint says, when did the calculations of going fully off-grid, when I did the calculation, of going fully off-grid, the reality of the situation is that it's not financially viable. That said, I do partially off-grid to cover essential loads during a cut. Troy says, can what James just described be explained by OfReg incompetence? It would seem that there's a sinister reason that residential rooftop solar is being restricted and hamstrung.
I will say this, and it's my personal view. I think one of the reasons why there's such a focus on utility scale, because if you give them the benefit of the doubt and you say, look, these are reasoned, intelligent people, the logic that they are now in 2020 arguing to the death against the core program because utility scale solar is cheaper, it's always been cheaper. And they've always supported the core program. So logically, that just tells you something's wrong here. They've always historically supported the program, and it's never been cheaper than utility scale solar. The issue, in my view, is that the National Energy Policy is a 20-year policy. It is now almost 5 years old. The review for that National Energy Policy is about to get underway, and that report is going to be issued next year. That report effectively is going to say, as it relates to renewable energy targets, we've effectively done nothing. And that's going to fall at the feet of certain people inside of OfReg. And the quickest way for them to make it up is to give certain people solar farms quickly, as quick as possible, so that they can say, see, statistically, we are catching up. That's my view of it. I don't have another good reason for why they're doing it. I think certain people in there are doing it to cover themselves.
Interesting. All right, let's
see. If they were here, if they had accepted your invite, they could defend themselves, and I would be curious to hear their own answer, but
yeah,
they didn't bother to show up.
Yes. Hi, Cameron says another report coming. Just another issue that Caymanians have the knowledge of and no political will to execute. Deaf ears ring the loudest. Tulsi says, sounds like there's some dirty backdoor deals going on between CUC and OfReg. The science supports rooftop solar, and only the corrupt, willfully misinformed, or completely incompetent can possibly argue otherwise. Flashpoint, we don't need any more consultants. We need competent people on the board of the regulator. Well, James, this has certainly been insightful. We want to thank you for joining the program this morning. We went into a little bit of overtime, but here on CMR, we want to get into the topics sufficiently for people to understand what's happening. We really don't watch the clock too much, but we are aware that it's a public holiday. And like you said, you've got 2 girls. I'm sure you've got family events planned for today. So we don't want to take up too much of your time, but we are grateful for the opportunity for you to at least explain from your perspective what is happening here. We extend the invitation to OfReg. Obviously, they turned down today, maybe in part because it was a public holiday and they probably don't work on holidays, but they can come on anytime that they're ready to try to explain, what is happening here.
Yeah,
the fact that they have addressed this on other media platforms, to me, doesn't really say much to us. I mean, we have thousands of people that will view this show, and on average, we're averaging 5,000 views per day. So I would have thought if they were interested in really reaching the Caymanian population who benefit or can benefit the most from on the roof solar access, they would have accepted the invitation. But at any point, they can contact us. It's as simple as that. We're here because the people want to know. Natasha says, what an eye-opener this morning. I think it's been an eye-opener on more than one level, but definitely. Cameron says we give sensible consultation for free, but spend piles of money on others to consult, and we still do nothing. James, thank you.
No problem, Sandy. Thank you very much. And if OfReg does decide that they want to come on your show, I will be there. Feel free to invite me. I'm sure they will disagree with me, but I will be happy to have the debate with them anytime, any place.
Yes. All right, my dear. Appreciate it. So again, folks, James Whitaker has come on the program today, telling us a little bit about why at the moment you cannot get, solar panels on your roof. And it's a shame because, like I said, every month I get my bill. I'm so happy to be paying this past month just $48 because that's hundreds of dollars that I'm saving that I can be spending on other things like health insurance, house insurance, and all the other necessities that you must have in place. So James, this is your first visit to the program. I'm sure it will not be your last visit. We'll look forward to chatting more. And if there's any updates in terms of this situation, by all means, please keep us abreast of that.
Will do. I expect to hear from the government next week, so we'll see what happens.
Yes, well, hopefully a new government, but anyway, we'll leave that there. Folks, April the 14th is right around the corner, and that means that you'll be going out and voting, and you need to vote about some change. You need to vote based on decisions like this. Don't be fooled by individuals who are trying to get you to vote based on who somebody is married to. That kind of stuff is just absolutely ridiculous. In fact, someone did message me and say that maybe what we need to do is get that police report for Mr. Vincent Frederick. So if you have access to the report, by all means, send it our way, because we would be happy to see the allegations and the details of why the police had to show up at his door over a domestic report. Here's a sponsored message from Mr. Elio Solomon, who's running in the District of Georgetown.
There's three major things that has to be addressed in the Cayman Islands: cost of living, diversifying the economy, and self-sufficiency. And when I talk about self-sufficiency, I'm talking about our ability, our capacity to be able to take care of ourselves. Let's focus on agriculture, where all of us want to make sure that we're hoping for the best. We always have to be prepared for the worst case scenario. Just imagine for a second if a hurricane was to come and sit between here and Florida, just like Hurricane Mitch did in 1998 in Honduras. What would happen? I would bet you the shelves would be empty, or at the minimum, very much depleted. That in itself should be able to identify to us that there is a major problem in terms of our capacity to feed ourselves here in the Cayman Islands. We have to solve that problem. And that's why if and when elected, I'm going to head out east and see if we can free up a lot of this locked land, open it up for opportunities for agriculture as well as other types of development. And when it comes to farming, whether it be livestock or plant life, I believe we can look beyond the borders of the Cayman Islands. What's preventing us from going to countries like Jamaica or to Honduras and actually owning or buying farms that are already functioning and operating and even exporting to other countries, making it Cayman Islands property? I believe that that's absolutely possible. In addition to that, creating opportunities for our local investors to be able to invest into those companies and other persons through their pension accounts as well. To me, the opportunities are tremendous, and that's my vision.
Miracle Brokers International is Cayman's premier source for all your packing, moving, and logistics needs. Whether it's moving a baby grand piano for a concert or moving halfway around the world, we have you covered with our team of local and international experts. MBI has over 30 years of industry experience and are able to get the job done for you right the first time. Contact us today for all your packing, moving, shipping, and logistics needs at 949-5989 or email info@miraclebrokers.com.
And I want my vote, and to do something about the discrimination that Caymanians face on a day-to-day basis within the workforce, and to do something about the bullying within the schools. Then you can talk to me. You do something about the unemployed people of my community. And I'm not talking about after COVID, I'm talking about before it, because it's been going on for years. We vote you guys in, and you guys go up there and you argue about nothing and make no changes. I'm tired of it, man. It's 2021. I can barely afford groceries, light, water, and I'm paying somebody else's mortgage. You wanna know why? Because I can't even afford a house. I got my mother and my father asking me why I don't have a house. Your Cayman is no longer for Caymanians. And it hurts my heart to say that. That Cayman is no longer for us. What children have?
A new dawn is on the horizon, shedding light on a new era as we reimagine the way forward. Hi, I'm Sabrina Turner, and I want to be your voice, your hope, your choice for Prospect. Life has changed abruptly and profoundly, but it's now more vital than ever that we work together to ensure the safety, health, and prosperity of the Cayman Islands as we rebuild an even more resilient future that is based on a foundation of national pride and unity. It's time to rethink our direction. It's time to look at the way we do things. It's time your voice is heard. It's time your hope for our country's future becomes a reality. It's time the right choice is made. I want to help you realize your hopes and dreams and be that voice for you. The time is now to rejuvenate Prospect and make it the vibrant community that it was, and approach issues such as beautification, safety, flooding, and crime, as we proactively deal with issues such as neighborhood nuances and unemployment. As your representative, safeguarding the lives and livelihoods of the people of Prospect will always be at the forefront of all that I do. And together, we can be the voice of change and the hope for a better tomorrow. I am Sabrina Turner, and I want to be your voice, your hope, your choice for Prospect.
Folks, I just want to remind you that Sabrina is hosting an event today for Easter. It's an Easter Family Fun Day at her new constituency, not yet constituency office, my apologies. At this point, it's her candidate office, headquarters. And if she is elected, it will turn into her constituency office. She's having an Easter Family Fun Day from 1 to 5 p.m. and the address is number 33 Marina Drive. There's going to be an Easter egg hunt for the children, bounce castle, garden games, snow cones, and much more. So take the kids out and enjoy this family fun day being hosted by Prospect candidate, none other than Sabrina Turner, who was able to secure, quite amazingly enough, an office location for her headquarters when others have said in the district that in the past 4 years, they were not able to find a constituency office. It appears to me that where there's a will, there's a way. Folks, thank you guys so much for tuning in to another show. Thank you so much, Carla, for a comment. Carla says, what is sad, Sandra, is that there's a lot of notoriously known abusers who walk around free, no jail time, despite having numerous assault cases against women, even assaulting police officers when being arrested. Some are bold enough to comment positively on this platform on domestic violence, ? How many victims will it take for elected politicians to make a change to the laws? Obviously, anger management classes have not been a deterrent for the majority of them, and they are walking. And unfortunately, the rest of that got cut off, Carla. But yes, I think your point is definitely taken. I've not heard any politician speak during this election cycle about a lot of the issues facing largely women, but not exclusive to women, which include domestic violence and abuse. And in fact, someone was messaging me during the break to say that the law is so flawed. They said, "Morning, Sandra, you have some attorneys too that also promote this hatred towards the exes of their clients. When it comes to maintenance, access for visitation, participation and collection of children from school, DNA testing just for embarrassment purposes." I went through it with several attorneys, one who was family-in-law. Many persons in this society promote violence in different ways just because they feel that they have the power of influence. It's very sad and also irresponsible and reprehensible. Do you know that the domestic violence law has a definition of a prescribed person, but that definition doesn't cover those women who are no longer in a relationship with the abuser in order for them to seek a restraining order from the courts? That's crazy to me. I cannot believe that. And they say now, if you're married or were married to the person, you are covered, but not unmarried and no longer in a relationship with the person. Folks, this is why I continually say the lack of decent legislators who can push for this type of legislation is just abhorrent. I cannot believe what someone is telling me, because it's like, we have fixed the loopholes as it relates to inheritance. So now when someone dies and they leave behind a child who was not a product of a marriage, but nonetheless is a child of theirs, they can now seek to receive some sort of inheritance from that deceased parent. For a long time, that wasn't the case. Isn't it shocking that Cayman probably have one of the highest instances of children born out of wedlock? And yet we do not have these types of protections in place. So there are lots of people who are engaging in relationships, who are having children or not even having children, but they're in relationships. And that is a domestic relationship. Maybe now that we have the domestic partnership law, this is something that we can look forward to extending, because that is still a relationship. So just because they were not married doesn't mean that they should not be afforded the same protections of a married couple when it comes to obtaining things like a restraining order from the court. That doesn't make any sense. So just because you were in a relationship with them and not married, you don't get the same protection? What kind of foolishness am I hearing? People, wake up. As Cameron says, eyes wide shut. We need our eyes wide open, because when we wake up and start demanding these things of our own legislators, then, if they can't answer to these things, they need to be voted out. 3 women in the Legislative Assembly, count them, 3, Juliana O'Connor Connolly, Barbara Connolly, and Tara Rivers, an attorney, 2 attorneys, and neither of them have advocated for any of these types of changes that really matter to the people. Instead, they remain silent as one of their own in Parliament assaulted a woman. Wow. All right, folks, that's all I've got for you today. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. There's more to come, trust me. So please stay tuned. Appreciate your comments. We have a lot of work to do. We have a long ways to go, folks. And I am really hoping that we make some meaningful decisions come April the 14th. That's all I've got for you. I'll see you guys tomorrow morning.
Thank you for tuning in to another edition of The Cold Hard Truth. Make sure to check Facebook for showtimes and more information and the latest news at CaymanMarlRoad.com. Subscribe to our IG and Facebook pages to get the latest happenings.